This is the 2010 West Virginia senatorial election with candidates Joe Manchin and John Race by Marcelli. The first major issue of this campaign is the age-old question of how big should government be. Both say it should be far smaller than it is now, it should spend less and be more responsive, and the current government is not working. There should also be less regulation on business. Manchin says it should be smaller, but not too small. The states needs federal government for certain services and jobs. Reese says it should be much smaller, back to real capitalism and freedom. States don't need the government, they'll be better on their own. The second major issue of this campaign is minimum wage. Should it be there or should it not? Manchin says yes, it's necessary to provide dignity and reward to even the most menial jobs, and it's good for the economy. Reese says no, it's a burden on employers' shoulders, it hurts the economy, and business should have the freedom to choose if they want to pay workers and how much they should. Now, the political ideologies of the two candidates. Joe Manchin calls himself a centrist Democrat. He's in favor of smaller government and less regulation. Also in favor of some government policies in groups that help the states. But he's still in favor of less government. Less government spending as well, and this is shown by his partial support for Obamacare and his opposition to the cap-and-trade bill and the opposition to the EPA. Now, John Reese calls himself he's a conservative Republican. He's in favor of smaller government and less regulation, in favor of far less government policies and far less groups. Less government spending, along with more free trade and capitalism, along with more businesses' freedom. This is shown by the opposition of Obamacare, the cap-and-trade, the EPA, government regulatory groups, and his major opposition to the minimum wage. Now, on the political spectrum, one-dimensional, each candidate is both on the conservative side, even though one of them is a Democrat, and they are very similar. They fall right next to each other on the political spectrum. My opinion on this election is it's really not going to be a vote on the issues like some campaigns. It's mostly going to be about other things. Some people see voting for Manchin as voting for Obama. West Virginia is not in favor of Obama, and they typically do not want to vote for him. So that's an issue. And a lot of people like Manchin a lot as governor. He actually has a 66% approval rating, and you got in with 70% of the vote. So they're voting whether to keep Manchin local and as governor by not voting for him, or keeping him or bumping him up to a senator, giving him national power to either vote for or against Obama. And then, since it's not really about issues and they have very similar views, who's the better person, who has more integrity, and who's going to do a better job in Washington? The first poll I have is a West Virginia survey of 750 likely voters conducted on the 26th of October by Rasmussen Reports. The question asked is, if the 2000 election for the United States Senate were held today, would you vote for Republican John Reese or Democrat Joe Manchin? The results were 46% supported John Reese, 49% Joe Manchin. The margin of error on this was 4%. So that means that either candidate still could win statistically, but Joe Manchin does have a lead at this point in time. Now, this poll is trustworthy because it's done by a professional, nonpartisan polling company, and it's conducted in a very simple, non-spin way. The second poll I have is by Rasmussen Reports as well, and it's taken 3 days earlier on October 23rd. It's of 1,000 likely voters and asks the same question. Now, only 3 days before, the results were 48% in favor of Reese and 46% in favor of Manchin. Now, that is a difference of 4 points each for each candidate, and puts Reese in the lead only 3 days before. This has a margin of error of 3% and a 95% level of confidence, which also means that both candidates could win as well. This poll is also inconclusive. It's trustworthy for the same reasons, but it also shows that the race is too close to call, but from polls alone. The interest groups for this campaign has been not many. There's only been one, and that's been the NRA. Many groups have contributed to the candidates, but none have really publicly supported a candidate and made a big deal out of it. Now, the NRA chose to support Joe Manchin, even though both candidates are lifetime members. And John Reese even says on his website that he is a lifetime NRA member. Now, this will help Joe Manchin because the NRA is a very important group, and has a lot of political influence in areas like West Virginia and the South. For the money breakdown, you can see that Joe Manchin has raised significantly more money than John Reese, even though they have spent almost the same amount of money. John Reese is very independently wealthy, and that's where he's getting the majority of the money that he's spending. As you can see for spending as well, both of them are using their money significantly for spending against each other. It's a very big mudslinging campaign. Both ads are negative. And top four industries for Joe Manchin: leadership PACs, electric utilities, building trade unions, lawyers, and law firms. Now this shows that he made a lot of relationships as governor, and he's really well liked. It allows him to raise a lot of money. John Reese does not choose to disclose this information for an unknown reason.
I'm Joe Manchin. I approve this ad because I'll always defend West Virginia.
As your senator, I'll protect our Second Amendment rights. That's why the NRA endorsed me. I'll take on Washington and this administration to get the federal government off of our backs and out of our pockets. I'll cut federal spending, and I'll repeal the bad parts of Obamacare. I sued EPA, and I'll take dead aim at the cap-and-trade bill. Because it's bad for West Virginia.
Joe Manchin's been supporting Barack Obama's liberal agenda for years. Manchin supports Obama's government-run health care and its $400 billion in Medicare cuts for seniors. That's wrong. He even supports raising our taxes to pay for it. And that's worse. We can't afford Joe Manchin in the Senate as a rubber stamp for Barack Obama.
I'm John Racy, and I approve of this message because I won't be a senator that's a rubber stamp to Barack Obama. I'll only serve you.
Advertisements for this campaign has been predominantly TV ads, and most of them have been negative. John Manchin uses ads to separate himself from the president and counteract Reese's rubber stamp ads. He points out Reese's business failures and political weaknesses, and his ads are very convincing and based on what seemed to be solid fact. They are very effective. Now, John Reese, on the other hand, uses ads to attack Manchin and project himself as a hard-working businessman. He tries to connect Manchin to the president and uses Manchin's party against him. Ads are not very convincing and seem to be based on inference and prediction about what he might do. They seem to not be very effective. The history of voting in West Virginia has been for predominantly Democrats for Senate. They've voted him in 5 times, and it's been by a landslide of 60% or greater every time. In 2008, they did vote for McCain, and the state does consider itself more Republican. But since they have a long history of voting for Democratic senators, this will definitely help Manchin win. I predict the winner of the West Virginia senatorial election to be Joe Manchin. I say this because most recent polls show him ahead. He's very popular and well-liked in West Virginia. He spent slightly more money on getting in than his competitor. He has better advertisements, in my opinion. He has greater relationships with interest groups from being governor, and his centrist ideals are more relatable to the public. Also, his position on minimum wage and government are much better for public opinion, and I believe that Reese's opposition to minimum wage will go a long way to reduce his chances of getting elected.